Hello, I'm Earl Nightingale, and I want to talk to you today about something that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Something so simple, so plainly obvious when you see it clearly, that you may wonder why nobody ever said it to you in plain language before. I want to talk to you about the one act of courage that separates the people who are truly alive from the people who are merely existing. And that act is this: forcing yourself to outgrow the old version of you. Now you may wonder what I mean by that. You may be thinking, Earl, I'm a grown adult. I have responsibilities. I have a history. I have a way of doing things that has gotten me this far. And I understand that. I want you to know right now that I understand it completely. Because what you're describing is something every human being on this earth has felt. The quiet, powerful pull of who you used to be. But let me ask you something. Is the life you are living today the life you imagined for yourself 20 years ago? Is the person looking back at you in the mirror every morning the fullest, richest, most capable version of the person you know, deep down you were meant to become? If your honest answer is no, and for most people, if they are being truly honest, it is no, then what I'm going to tell you today may be the most important thing you will hear all year. Here is the great law, here is the anchor of everything we're going to talk about. And it is this: we become what we think about. That is the great law. We become what we think about. Whatever we hold in our minds, consistently, persistently, with feeling and with belief, we move toward it. We attract it. We become it. And the reverse is equally true. Whatever we refuse to think about, whatever we push aside, whatever we tell ourselves we cannot do or cannot be, that, too, we become. Or rather, we remain. Most people, you see, are not failing because they lack talent. They are not stuck because the world is against them. They are exactly where they are because they have been thinking the same thoughts, making the same choices, and protecting the same identity for years, sometimes for decades. And that identity, that old version of themselves, feels like home. Now, let me tell you a story. There was a man I once knew about, a tradesman, a cabinetmaker, a good and honest man who had learned his craft in his early 20s. He was skilled. He was reliable. And in those first years, his work was considered some of the finest in his county. But somewhere around the age of 35, something happened. Not a tragedy, not a crisis, something quieter and far more dangerous. He stopped learning. He had found a level of competence that earned him enough to get by, and so he stopped reaching. He told himself he had arrived. He told himself, this is who I am. This is what I do. And for a while, it was enough. But the world did not stop moving simply because he had. New tools arrived, new methods, younger craftsmen who had studied and stretched and outgrown their earlier selves. And that good man, that honest and capable man, found himself 15 years later being passed over for work he once would have won without a second thought. Not because he had become worse, but because he had stayed the same in a world that kept growing. He had protected the old version of himself so carefully, so devotedly, that he had sealed himself inside it like a room with no windows and no door. Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever considered that the greatest risk in your life is not failure, but the comfortable, invisible suffocation of staying exactly who you already are? You see, nature does not permit anything to stand still. A tree is either growing or it is dying. A river is either moving or it becomes stagnant. And a human being, you, the person listening to me right now, you are either becoming more or you are, slowly and silently, becoming less. The old version of you was built for a smaller life. It was built with the information you had then, the courage you could muster then, the beliefs that seemed reasonable then. And it served you. I want you to honor it for that. That old version of you survived. It got you here, and that is no small thing. But here is the point. Surviving is not the same as living. And the clothes that fit you at 30 may not fit you at 50. And if you try to force yourself into them, something tears. It is exactly the same with identity. The beliefs, the habits, the self-image you constructed in an earlier chapter of your life, they may be tearing something in you right now. And you can feel it, can't you? That low hum of restlessness. That sense that there is something more, something larger, waiting just on the other side of who you currently allow yourself to be. Now, let me tell you something important. I know that outgrowing yourself is not easy. I'm not going to stand here and tell you it is. I know that the old you feels like home, and home, even when it is too small, even when the roof leaks and the walls have closed in, is still familiar, and familiar feels safe. So when I ask you to stretch beyond that, to shed that old skin, there is a part of you that resists. There is a voice that says, but this is who I am. This is just the way I'm built. I want you to listen to that voice, and then I want you to disagree with it, because that voice is not the voice of truth. That voice is the voice of habit. And habits, unlike bones, can be changed. You are not your habits. You are not your history. You are not the sum of your disappointments, or your limitations, or the years that have already passed. You are what you choose to think about consistently. From this moment forward, we become what we think about. That is the great law. And it works with perfect, unfailing precision, whether you believe it or not, whether you are aware of it or not. Right now, your mind is a garden, and in that garden, something is growing. The question is not whether something will grow. The question is, what have you been planting? If you have been planting thoughts of limitation. I'm too old. I've missed my chance. I've already made too many mistakes. Then a garden of limitation is exactly what you will harvest. I have seen it 1,000 times, and I have also seen the reverse, which is a far more beautiful thing to witness. I have seen men and women at 40, at 50, at 60 and beyond who made a decision. A quiet, firm, unshakable decision to stop protecting who they used to be and to start becoming who they were still capable of becoming. And the change in them was extraordinary, not overnight, not without struggle, but real, measurable, as reliable as the sunrise, because the soil of your mind, you see, does not care how old you are. It does not care what you have done before, or how long you have been stuck, or how many times you have tried and fallen short. It only knows one law: whatever you plant in it, consistently and with genuine conviction, it will grow. Now you may wonder, how exactly does a person go about killing the old version of themselves? That sounds dramatic, and in a way it is, because it requires something that most people find genuinely difficult. It requires grief. You must grieve the old you before you can fully become the new one. Think of it this way. The caterpillar does not simply decide to become a butterfly. It dissolves. It completely breaks down what it was inside that chrysalis before something new can take its place. And that process is not comfortable. But there is no shortcut around it. For you, that grieving looks like this. It means admitting that certain beliefs you have carried for decades are no longer serving you. It means acknowledging that some of the stories you have told yourself about who you are and what you deserve may have been wrong all along. It means letting go of the excuses, as comfortable as they have become, not with self-hatred, not with shame, but with the firm and quiet determination of a person who has finally decided to plant better seeds. And here is the point that I want you to carry with you long after this recording ends. The act of outgrowing yourself is not a betrayal of who you were. It is the greatest possible tribute to your potential. It is you saying, with your choices, with your effort, with your daily thoughts and actions, I believe there is more. I believe I am capable of more, and I am willing to do what is required to find out how much more there is. That is not arrogance. That is stewardship, the finest possible use of the one life you have been given. Consider this. Every great person you have ever admired in any field, in any era, was once someone smaller than they became. Lincoln was once a backwoods boy who had never held public office. Edison was once a child who was told by a teacher that he was too stupid to learn. Every craftsman was once an apprentice. Every wise person was once a fool. The difference between those who grew and those who did not was not talent, and it was not luck, and it was not the accident of a favorable birth. The difference was a decision. A daily, deliberate, sometimes painful decision to outgrow the version of themselves that yesterday had made cause and effect, sowing and reaping. You put in the thought, the effort, the discomfort of genuine growth, and you will reap a life, a self, that is richer and more capable than anything the old version of you could have imagined. Now, I want you to think about something that lives in almost every person alive, something they rarely name out loud, but feel deeply in the quiet hours, usually somewhere between midnight and dawn when the house is still and the world has stopped asking anything of them. There is a shadow that follows the man or woman who has not yet outgrown who they used to be. And that shadow whispers. It does not shout. It does not arrive all at once. It comes the way cold comes through an old window in January, gradually, almost imperceptibly, until one morning you realize you have been shivering for years and simply stopped noticing. That shadow tells you that the life you have now is probably the life you deserve, that the ceiling above you is probably the correct one, that people like you, with your particular history, your particular age, your particular collection of regrets, do not get to begin again. It tells you that the door to more has already closed, and that standing still is the only reasonable thing left to do. And here is what I want you to hold on to, because this is important. That voice is not wisdom. That voice is erosion. Now let me ask you to do one thing before we go any further. I want you to hold your right hand open, palm facing upward, and imagine you are holding a seed. Just a single seed, small enough that you could lose it in a gust of wind. A snake, you know, does not negotiate with its old skin. It does not sit down and consider whether the shedding is convenient, or whether the timing is right, or whether the world outside might be harder than the world it has known inside. It simply grows until the old skin can no longer contain what it is becoming, and then it releases it, not reluctantly, completely, because the alternative to shedding is not comfort. The alternative to shedding is suffocation. You are not so different from that snake. The old version of you, the one built from yesterday's information, yesterday's courage, yesterday's understanding of what was possible, was the right skin for that season. I want you to honor it for that. It carried you. It protected you. It got you to this very moment. But consider this. If it is still the only skin you are wearing, something is already tearing. You can feel it. That low, persistent sense that who you are today no longer quite fits the person you know. In your most honest moments, you were built to become. And here is where the morning light comes in. The soil of your mind does not hold a grudge against the seeds you failed to plant in seasons past. It does not keep a ledger of your missed opportunities or your wasted years. It simply waits, patient and ready, and entirely without judgment, for you to decide that today is the day you plant something new. You can plant that seed right now, not next year, not when conditions improve now, because the snake does not wait for a warmer day to shed what no longer fits. It sheds because growing demands it, and so do you. Now I want to tell you about a trap, and it is the most elegant trap ever built, because the person inside it built it themselves, and they decorated it so carefully, so lovingly, over so many years, that they have come to call it a home. Most people walking this earth today believe something about themselves that they have never once stopped to examine. They carry it the way they carry their name, automatically, without question, as though it were simply a fact of nature, rather than a conclusion they arrived at long ago, under circumstances they may no longer even remember. And that belief, that unexamined, unchallenged, deeply familiar belief, is this, that who they are is fixed, that their personality is their destiny, that the particular set of traits and tendencies and limitations they have accumulated over the decades is not a habit. It is a truth. And that belief, my friend, may be costing you more than anything else in your life. Because here is the quiet horror of it. A man who believes his ceiling is low will never reach for anything above it. Not because his arms are too short, but because he stopped believing the ceiling could move. And so he arranges his life very neatly beneath it. He makes it comfortable down there. He calls it being realistic. He calls it knowing himself. And all the while, the ceiling was never the ceiling at all. It was simply the height of his most repeated thought. Now, let me ask you to pause here for just a moment. Think of a river. Not a rushing river. A slow, wide, unhurried river moving through flat country. On the surface, it looks still. If you stood on the bank and watched it, you might almost think it was not moving at all. But put your hand beneath the surface, and you would feel it immediately. A constant, steady, irresistible current, moving, always moving. Even when nothing appears to be happening on the surface, the water beneath has not stopped. Your identity works in precisely that way. You see, what you call your personality is not a monument. It is a river. It has been moving your entire life, shaped by every book you read or refuse to read, every conversation you lingered in or walked away from, every morning you rose early or pulled the covers back over your head. Every single day, something was being deposited into that river, and the river was becoming something in response, not dramatically, not with announcements, quietly, continuously, the way all rivers move, which means this, and I want you to hear this clearly, because it changes everything. You have never once stopped becoming someone. The only question that has ever mattered is whether you were becoming someone deliberately or by default. And here is where the ground beneath your feet becomes solid again. If identity is a habit, and it is, I assure you it is, then it can be redirected. The river that carved one canyon can, with new inputs, new persistent and deliberate inputs, begin carving another. Not overnight, not without effort, but with the same quiet, unstoppable certainty with which it carved the first one. You are not sentenced to who you have been. You are the farmer standing at the edge of a field that has grown the same crop for years, finally picking up a different seed and understanding, for the first time, that the soil never cared what you planted. It only ever grew what you gave it something new. Beginning today, now there is a particular kind of loss that never makes the front page of any newspaper. Nobody writes about it. Nobody holds a service for it. It arrives without a single dramatic moment to mark its coming, and it leaves no wreckage that anyone standing beside you could point to and say, there, that is where it happened. And yet it is, I believe, the most common and the most quietly devastating loss a human being can suffer in a lifetime. It is the loss of the person you were still capable of becoming. And the cruelest part, the part that makes it so difficult to defend against, is that it does not arrive all at once. It arrives the way a shoreline erodes, one wave at a time, one small retreat at a time, one not today and one maybe next year and one I'm probably too old for that now at a time. And because each individual wave seems harmless, because no single day of standing still feels like a catastrophe, the person standing on that shoreline rarely notices how much ground they have surrendered until the day they turn around and find that the land they were standing on is simply gone. Gone. And they cannot tell you when it left. Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever considered that the cost of staying the same is not paid all at once, like a bill that arrives in the mail and demands your attention? It is paid in installments so small, so quiet, so spread across the years, that the total never appears on any single statement. Now, I want you to stop here with me for just a moment. Picture a pocket watch, a fine one, the kind a man's grandfather might have carried, kept polished, wound faithfully every morning without thinking much about it. Now imagine that same watch unwound, not broken, Not damaged, not struck by anything, simply unwound, left on a shelf, untouched for a week, then a month, then a year. And when someone finally picks it up and holds it to their ear, there is nothing. No tick, no movement. The hands pointing to a time that has not been accurate in a very long while. Nothing went wrong with that watch. It was simply never given what it needed to keep moving. You see, the human mind is the most extraordinary instrument ever devised. But it operates on precisely the same principle as that watch. It must be wound, deliberately, consistently, with intention, and with the genuine belief that what you are winding it toward is worthy of the effort. Leave it on the shelf of routine and comfort and the safe repetition of yesterday, and it will not break. It will simply stop. And the hours it was meant to measure, the growth it was designed to track, will pass in silence. This is what the man or woman who refuses to outgrow themselves is truly choosing. Not comfort, not safety, not the preservation of something valuable. They are choosing the shelf. And the shelf, no matter how familiar it feels, is not a life. It is a pause that became permanent. And here is where the light finds its way back in, because a watch left on a shelf for years can still be wound. The mechanism has not forgotten its purpose. The hands will move again. The gears will catch. And the moment you pick it up, the very moment you decide to give it what it needs, it begins again. Not from where it left off, from right now, from this exact moment, which, I want you to understand, is the only moment that has ever mattered. The erosion of yesterday does not have to be the blueprint for tomorrow. The shoreline that retreated can hold its ground, beginning with the next wave, if the man or woman standing on it finally decides to stand firm. You have not missed your season. You have simply been waiting for the morning you decide you haven't. That morning can be this one. Now, I want to talk to you about something that stops more people from becoming who they are capable of becoming than failure ever has. More than lack of talent, more than lack of opportunity, more than any external obstacle the world could place in their path. And the reason it stops so many for so long is that it does not feel like an obstacle at all. It feels like loyalty. There is a pull, and if you have ever tried to change something fundamental about yourself, you know exactly what I am describing. A deep, wordless, almost gravitational pull back toward who you used to be, back toward the familiar thoughts, back toward the habitual of responses, back toward the version of yourself that, whatever its limitations, at least has the virtue of being known. And that pull is so powerful, so persistent, so woven into the fabric of daily life that most people eventually stop fighting it, not because they gave up on the dream of becoming more, but because fighting it felt, somehow, like a betrayal, like they were turning their back on something that had been good to them, and in a very real sense, it was good to them. That is precisely what makes this so difficult. Because the old you was not your enemy. It was your shelter. It was built plank by plank from every hard season you survived, every disappointment you absorbed, every morning you got up when getting up was the last thing you felt like doing. That old identity carried you. It kept the wind out. And now you are being asked, by life, by growth, by the quiet, persistent voice of your own unrealized potential, to walk away from it, to leave the shelter standing and step out into open country. And that, my friend, requires something that nobody tells you it requires now. I want you to sit very quietly with me for just a moment. Think of a man you may have seen, or perhaps known, who has lost something he loved, not in anger, not in conflict, simply lost it to time, or to change, or to the natural movement of life that waits for no one. And think about the particular silence that surrounds such a man in the days that follow. The way he moves a little slowly, the way he reaches sometimes for something that is no longer there. That is not weakness you are watching. That is the honest, necessary work of a soul releasing its grip on what was, so that both hands become free for what comes next. Growing beyond yourself asks the very same thing of you. You see, the people who try to leap into a new identity without honoring what they are leaving behind almost always find themselves pulled back because they skipped a step. They tried to become someone new while quietly despising who they had been. And you cannot build a sturdy future on a foundation of contempt for your own past. The math simply does not work that way. But the person who pauses, who sits honestly with the weight of what they are releasing, who says quietly and without self-pity, "This version of me served its purpose, and I am grateful for it, and I am also done with it." That person walks forward with something the leaper does not have. They walk forward with both hands open, with their full weight behind the step, with a kind of clean, deliberate, unencumbered intention that the soil of a new life responds to the way good soil always responds to a seed planted with care. The chrysalis, is not a comfortable place. What happens inside it is not gentle. The caterpillar does not simply rearrange itself into a new shape. It dissolves. It surrenders every familiar structure it has ever known. And from that complete and honest dissolution, something with wings emerges. You are not being asked to destroy yourself. You are being asked to dissolve what no longer serves you with the same honesty and the same courage, so that what is waiting to emerge in you finally has the room it needs. And here is where the ache lifts. The grief of outgrowing yourself is not a sign that something is going wrong. It is the clearest possible sign that something is going profoundly right. It means you have grown large enough that the old walls can no longer hold you. It means the person you are becoming is real enough and near enough that the distance between who you were and who you are becoming is something you can finally feel. Feel it. Do not run from it. Do not mistake it for a reason to turn back. It is not a warning. It is a door. And on the other side of it, waiting with more patience than you have perhaps shown yourself in a very long time, is the person you have always had the capacity to be. Walk through. Now let me ask you something very directly. What is one belief about yourself that you have been carrying for more than 5 years? A belief that tells you what you cannot do, what you cannot become, what you are simply not built for. That might not be true. I want you to sit with that question, because somewhere in your honest answer to it is the door to a larger life. The old you believed that thing. The new you is not obligated to. There's a farmer I want you to think about. Every spring, this farmer walks his fields. And every spring, he faces the same fundamental choice. He can plant what he planted last year, what he knows, what is comfortable, what requires no new learning, and harvest more or less what he harvested before. Or he can look at that field with fresh eyes and ask, what more is this land capable of? What am I not yet planting that the soil could grow? The great farmers, the ones who feed more, who build more, who leave more behind, they are always asking that second question. You are the farmer. Your mind is the field. And this moment, right now, is spring. You have more seasons ahead of you than you may believe. I know there are days when the years feel heavy, when the road behind you seems longer than the road ahead. But I want to tell you with complete conviction, the seed you plant today does not know how old the farmer is. It only knows whether it has been planted with care, with consistency, and with genuine belief in the harvest. We become what we think about. You will become what you think about starting today, if you choose it. Now here is what I want you to do. Just one thing. One simple, specific daily act that will begin the process of outgrowing the old you. I want you to take 1 hour a day, just 1 hour, and spend it deliberately becoming someone new. In that hour, read something that challenges the limits of who you currently believe yourself to be. Think on paper, in a quiet room, about the person you would become if the old limitations were simply not true. Write down one belief about yourself that you are ready to outgrow and one belief about yourself that you are ready to plant in its place. Do this for 30 days, just 30 days, 1 hour a day. And I promise you, not because it sounds inspiring, But because this is the law, your mind will begin to grow in the direction of those new thoughts with exactly the same reliability that a garden grows in the direction of sunlight. You were not put here to be the person you have always been. You were put here to become the person you are still capable of being. The old you got you this far. That is a gift. Honor it, and then let it go.